This is Devin with the Cage Rage podcast, and this is going to be the Wage Rage for UFC on ESPN Plus 7 this Saturday on ESPN Plus. This is going to be in St. Petersburg, Russia. So I don't know what time it'll be on live, and I know they're in a different time zone, obviously, but this Saturday, April 20th. But going at the first fight that I'm going to cover is Antonina Shevchenko versus Roxanne Modafferi. As you see there, Shevchenko is the minus 350 favorite to the plus 290 underdog that is Modafferi. Shevchenko, that last name might sound familiar to you, to anybody who's not aware. She is the sister of current UFC women's flyweight champion Valentina Shevchenko. And I believe she's the older sister of the two, and she's only 7-0 in her pro career, and she's going against Roxanne Modafferi, who's is really a long veteran of women's MMA. She's got almost 40 fights, which you don't see that too often in women's professional mixed martial arts. She's 22-15 overall. 36 years old. Miguel was talking about in our preview show for this when we talked a little bit about this earlier this week about how he used to matchmake for Roxanne and knew her well. So she's been around for quite a while, and she's definitely, I think, a live dog here. This is somebody that you might want to take a look at if you're willing to put some money on this. And those odds, for anybody who's not familiar with odds, you got to put $350 on Shevchenko to win $100. You got to if you put $100 in Modafferi wins, you gain $290. So she's an interesting one to look at because of the experience and because of her style. She's a very heavy grappler. She's been in there. She fought tough on the Ultimate Fighter series with Sijara Eubanks twice, and she hung tough with Nico Montano, the former flyweight champion. And she's gritty, and I thought about picking her as a dog pick for this fight, but I think Shevchenko, knowing that her sister is Valentina, and even with the lack of experience, she's got a legit kickboxing background, and she's been training, with the same people that Valentina's been with. So I think they're going to have her well prepared, and I think she'll be able to deal with what Roxanne brings to the table. And we've seen Valentina, her sister, who's one I'm going to have to go a lot off on for this fight, analyzing it. She's her grappling's improved tremendously over the short period of time that she's been in the UFC, and she's a legit champion of this division. And really, there's nobody that I see beating her anytime soon. So I think Antonina is going to be well prepared going forward for this fight. So I'm going to pick her to win, probably a decision in a 3-round fight. And moving forward on the main card, we got Ivan Shtyrkov versus Devin Clark. And as you see here, Shtyrkov is a minus 165 favorite, and Devin Clark is a plus 145 underdog. Shtyrkov is fighting out of Russia, 16-0-1 in his career, and he will be making his UFC debut, but he's fought UFC veterans like Thiago Silva and Bigfoot Silva and beat them both, and Fabio Maldonado. So he's got some names on his resume that he's already dispatched. And Devin Clark is coming in 500 in his UFC tenure, and he lost his last fight to Alexander Rakic in the first round, got knocked out. And I don't think that they're bringing Devin Clark to Russia with the intention of him beating a potential Russian prospect in his own backyard. I think this is going to be a showcase fight for Shtyrkov, and this is a division that really needs some new talent. We've seen Johnny Walker ascend to notoriety, and people like Dominic Reyes, but this is a division who, for the past 5 or 6 years, has been really dominated by John Jones and Daniel Cormier. And you've had a few contenders in there, Gustafsson and Anthony Rumble Johnson. But we haven't really seen very much depth in this division with a lot of young talent coming in. I like seeing that starting to change a little bit. So I think Ivan Shtyrkov is going to win this fight, and I hope that he becomes a legit contender for us to look forward to going forward. I do think that these odds are a little low, though. I think he should be a higher favorite, so it's tempting to look at just putting in $165 to gain 100. I know you don't ever want to really bet more than what you could win, but I think he's a very safe pick. So I'm going to go with Shtyrkov on this. And then going on, we got Sergey Pavlovich versus Marcelo Golm. And when you look at this, I know that the only time I've seen Pavlovich was he made his UFC debut last November in China against Alistair Overeem, which that's a tough UFC debut. And before that, he was undefeated. But he got finished in the first round by Overeem. And he looks like a very physical fighter and very tough. And with Marcelo Golm, he's 1-2 in the UFC. So this is a much better fight for this point in Pavlovich's UFC tenure than just starting him out against Alistair Overeem. But Golm, when I looked at his record, he's 6-2. He's only 26 years old. Lost his last 2 fights to Timothy Johnson and to Arjan Bolger, 2 heavy wrestlers. But when I looked at his wins before he got in the UFC, most of them were against like 0-0, 0-2, 1-0. I mean, he hadn't fought anybody. So until his win against Christian Colombo in his UFC debut, he really hadn't fought anybody with any sort of resume, not even like legit pros. So that he's still pretty inexperienced. I think Pavlovich, I think this will be a good fight for him at this stage of his career, a lot better, as I said, than fighting Overeem in your debut. So I'm going to go with Pavlovich to win this fight. And in his backyard, and I think this will be a good performance by him. And Golm, I think, is still young and improving, but I think he just got into the UFC a little too early. And moving on to the co-main event of the night, you got Islam Makhachev taking on 22-year-old Arman Tsarukyan, and Makhachev is minus 325 favorite, and the 22-year-old Tsarukyan is a plus 265 underdog. And when it comes to Islam Makhachev, it was unsure if he was ever going to fight in the UFC again. He was one of those 2 teammates of Khabib that jumped the cage and attacked Conor McGregor after the main event back in October between Khabib and Conor. And there was rumor that he was going to be cut, and Khabib kind of saved him there. Well, number one, Conor didn't press any charges for the whole altercation, and Khabib basically said, if you cut my teammate, you got to cut me. So they ended up keeping him around, and I think he did take a little bit of a suspension. Could be wrong about that. Don't quote me. But he's back, and he's a heavy favorite, and he's 5-1 inside the octagon. There is some people saying this Tsarukyan, who's making his UFC debut, is a very tough kid, but only 22 years old, going against an established UFC vet that's teammates with Khabib, who fights a lot like Khabib. Very aggressive fighter that's cut from that same Dagestani and Chechenian cloth that comes from the Caucasus regions of Russia. I mean, those guys, that's a tough, hard culture over there. So I think Islam Makhachev is going to be battle ready, and I think he's going to come, hungry after the whole altercation. And I think that he's has the co-main event over there in Russia, and he's going to be motivated, and I think he's going to put on a good performance here. And I think that he might be ranked after this because he's a very solid fighter. And moving forward to the main event of the night, we got Alistair Overeem taking on Alexey Oleinik. And these are 2 guys who have a lot of experience. You've got 44-17 is Overeem's record, and 57-11-1 is Olynyk's record. So like almost 130 fights between the 2 of them. And Overeem's 38 years old. Olynyk is 41 years old. Overeem, very decorated K1 kickboxer, been around for many years and fought the who's who of the heavyweight division for years, former Strikeforce champion. And he's, had his ups and downs. I was telling Miguel that, I don't know if I've ever seen anybody that's been knocked out as many times as Overeem has. I mean, dating back to the Pride days, I've seen him get knocked out by Ricardo Arona and Chuck Liddell and Mauricio Shogun Rua to his time in the UFC, where I can think of several names: Ben Rothwell, Travis Brown, Bigfoot Silva, Stipe Miocic. The list goes on and on. Curtis Blades recently, obviously, the Ngannou fight, it looked like he was dead after that knockout. So that's always been something that's concerned me with Overeem, is he gets knocked out a lot, but he shouldn't have to worry about that in this fight with a guy like Olynyk, who is a heavy grappler. He got very good chokes, and he goes for him. He pulls him in. He's very slick with him. Has a lot of experience. I'm not sure that he's going to be fast enough and a good enough wrestler to get Overeem to the ground and be able to maneuver a submission hold on him. Overeem can grapple too. He can wrestle, and he's really good in the clinch. That's how he dropped Brock Lesnar back when they fought in his return to the UFC, his UFC debut against Brock Lesnar, and he's got a lot of experience, and I think that this is a good fight for him at this point of his career. I don't think that he's got to worry about getting his jaw cracked and getting knocked out in this fight, which is something that just worries me, with just taking the accumulation of damage that Overeem's taken over the years. And so that concerns me. But I think that this is going to be a good fight. I think you're going to see Overeem hurt him in the clinch with knees. And I think that the Fabricio Verdum fights that Overeem had are an indication of how this fight will go. He was very good against Verdum both times. Verdum, he was even trying to clinch up and just pull guard with him, and Overeem wasn't having any of it. And so I think that I think this is a good fight for Overeem at this stage in his career. I think Olynyk will just be a little too slow, and Overeem will be the superior striker, better in the clinch. And I don't see Olynyk being able to pull off that top-heavy grappling game against Overeem. So this has been the Wage Rage, UFC on ESPN Plus 7 this weekend, Saturday. It's in Russia. And this is a little bit lighter of a card, a little bit thinner when it comes to name value here in the States compared to what we've been spoiled with this year. We've had a long run of great cards this year that the UFC has given us, great pay-per-views, great fight night cards. And this one's a little thinner, but a lot of that's just because we don't recognize those Russian names, but we know what kind of culture is over there right now, what they're pumping out. They're pumping out guys like Khabib. So, and Petr Yan is another big bantamweight that's coming from this region that's, I think, going to be maybe fighting for a title in the next year or so. I mean, very tough young talent. So I would stay tuned to this. I think there's going to be some of these names that we're gonna see in the future. And it's a lot of times the cards we least expect to deliver turn out to give us a lot of great fights. So tune in. And, here on the CRP, if you have not liked us on Facebook, if you have not liked our YouTube page in particular, please go and do that, because there's a lot of people I think that have liked our Facebook page but haven't liked our YouTube page. But go check out some of our history podcasts. We're covering past, present, and future here on the CRP, and Miguel stays busy on a day-to-day basis, bringing odds, bringing news briefs. He's on here. We've got a great boxing analyst in ASP who's been, he's predicted a lot of good dog picks, and Chad's going to be back on camera soon. And, there's a lot of stuff with him and Miguel from months ago that are very interesting and worth a watch. And, we're working together as a team here to see this grow. So support us here on the Cage Rage podcast. We're going to continue to bring you minute by minute, day by day briefs about what's going on in the world of combat sports, boxing, MMA, and stay tuned to our Wage Rage picks. Bet on us if you want. We've got a pretty good record going on our picks. So I hope that I delivered with this one. We'll see this weekend, and stay tuned to next time.